We are in the process of making our plan to ditch the land-based lifestyle and chart a new course into liveaboard cruising. Thank you for dropping by our channel, and we hope you will stick with us to see how our journey unfolds. Please hit the like and subscribe button. We need your help. We just got back from 7 days of sailing a 2017 Lagoon 42 through the British Virgin Islands, and I'm going to tell you today why we will never buy a Lagoon catamaran. Before I do, please subscribe to the channel, because in the next few weeks we will be publishing some videos on voyage catamaran walkthroughs that we did in Soper's Hall, a review of Sunsail moorings, yacht charters in Road Town, and some more breaking free sailing prequel episodes of our charter experiences at various destinations. We also have a few prequel episodes and boat search reviews already published, so be sure to check out our video list to see if there's anything that interests you. Now, let's review that Lagoon. We reserved a 1-week bareboat charter with Sunsail in Road Town, Tortola in the BVI. Sunsail white labels all their charter boats, so you will see the boat marked as Sunsail 424, but it's really a Lagoon. This boat was fabulously comfortable. Our entire crew of 7 adults loved being aboard and enjoyed the comfort provided by the Lagoon 42, both under sail and at anchor. It's very spacious and it never felt crowded with the size of our crew. It has a great balance of places to comfortably sit both in the shade and in the sun. It was lovely to sit in the main salon with the shade and the soft breeze blowing through and watch the progress of the boat from there. The boat sailed surprisingly well, even towards the wind. We were able to point high enough to get the tail of the Windex very close to the index arms, and we spent several hours one day tacking to wind with very reasonable VMG. The boat was very easy to handle and maneuver, with the engines and the helm situated in a way that gave you a nice view of the boat. However, I did notice that the portside helm station and the high cabin top created a very large blind spot for the starboard hull position. This took a little getting used to when bringing it to a dock on the starboard side. The Lagoon 42 design has a great, comfortable layout that was a joy to experience. So, why would we never own a Lagoon? Simply put, we do not have the feeling that Lagoons will stand up to the test of time in a marine environment. This boat was just 5 years old, and it was already starting to have some issues. We had some things not working with the vessel that may not have been the fault of Lagoon directly. The Northern Lights generator would not stay running more than 10 or 15 minutes before an auto shutoff happened, and the system did not give you any fault information about why it shut off. This could be an issue with Northern Lights, but lack of information about the problem is not convenient to an owner-operator. Something more related to the design problems by Lagoon were all 4 of the heads. We had 2 wet heads and 2 dry heads with separate showers. We had problems in all 4 heads. The first being that waste was constantly backing up into the toilets. The check valves in the heads were all failing. Again, this could just be a usage problem, and the valves were worn out, but I think the positioning of the tanks and the hose leads could have been better. The black water through hull drains were located in the aft heads for both sides. There were 2 ball valves, one for the forward head and one for the aft. I think the hose links in this design and the positioning of the tanks created a situation where it was very difficult to get the waste to travel all the way to the tanks. Even if we ran copious amounts of seawater through the head after use, it seemed it was never enough to keep the backwash from stinking up the entire head. Another thing about the heads was the design of tying the gray water system to the same through-hull discharge in the floor. In the wet heads that were forward, when you run the water in the sink, it triggers the scupper pumps beneath your feet and the drain for the floor. I'm sure Lagoon is not the only manufacturer to do this, but these scuppers were failing. If you brushed your teeth, the floor of your head was going to get a little wet at a minimum. In the most problematic head, the bad scupper would kick in and start spraying water up onto your legs and left a 1/4 inch of water over the entire floor of the head. Once again, this is the result of failing parts and maintenance after high usage, but I couldn't help feeling there was a better design that would allow for a little more unpumped water to exist without creating a backup on the floor. In the end, the crew simply stopped using the heads for showering. They smelled too badly, and they were going to make such a mess of their head that they preferred to clean up on the aft deck with the transom shower head. We showered under the cover of darkness or with strategically positioned towels to provide a little privacy. I think people began to care a little less about the privacy as well because we were sailors and it's the Caribbean, and somehow things there just seem a little different. We made lemonade out of some lemons and people began to look forward to their open-air showers. However, the real deal breaker for us is the signs of leaking in the cabins and the selection of cabin materials that are not suitable to a marine environment. We were looking for these problems coming into the charter, and the problems were confirmed. We had been shopping for catamarans for a while, and we looked at a few lagoons in Florida that were between 10 and 15 years old, and every one of them showed signs of significant water damage to the interior spaces. The plywood that Lagoon uses to make the beautiful surfaces all around the vessel just isn't suitable for wet environments. In the boats that were 10 to 15 years old, there was significant delamination, swelling, warping, and discoloring of these surfaces. Our boat was just 5 years old, and we could see the beginning of these problems if we inspected the surfaces closely. Lagoon also uses veneer to trim out the edges of their plywood, and the veneer almost always seemed to start to peel. We found some veneer starting to peel in the boat we chartered, too. Once again, someone could argue that boats in charter, or boats that are not taken care of, create wear and tear that are simply going to damage boats, but boats spend their entire lives in the water. Things are absolutely going to get wet from time to time, and the materials the boat are built with must stand up to some water exposure. And then there's the construction of the boat and its ability to defend itself against water. We had 30 minutes of very heavy rain on one of our days, and it exposed a couple of significant flaws. The rain caught us off guard, and we had to rush around to find open windows and hatches. This has been known to happen on boats, and it's going to continue to happen. Before we got the beautiful windows and the front of the salon closed, we had a lot of water come into the boat and onto the shelf that is just inside those windows. If the windows hinged outward, would they have kept most of the rain outside? The water that did get in landed on a plywood surface not made for water exposure, and we wiped it up right away. However, we could see that this had happened before because the joint between the two pieces of wood was already showing signs of swelling and delamination and discoloration. Was it smart to take very beautiful, non-marine grade material and put them in a place that would almost certainly be exposed to moisture at some point? It probably was not. A more serious concern to me was that during the rain we found water streaming into our clothes locker in the master cabin. It was not gallons of water pouring in, but it was not just a few drops either. It was a steady stream of a little water. We could see evidence of previous water damage on the edges of the doors in that bulkhead. Most disturbingly, the closet was on the interior side of the hull and directly beneath the helm station. It was not simply a stanchion leaking or a window leaking. I could only imagine how much interior surface the water must have traveled over to find its way to our closet. I could not find the source of the leak, but after inspecting the helm area, I noticed the massive amounts of caulk they used to make the fiberglass sections come together in a watertight way. If you consider a lagoon for purchase, I implore you to look closely for signs of water damage, and I'll bet you will find several instances of delamination and rot. One of the 10 to 15-year-old lagoons we looked at in Florida had a big section of the wooden shelf rotted away, 2 inches around the metal pole that supported the mast. So much water had gotten in it had just chipped away at the wood surface. So is this all just because we were on our charter boat that gets beaten on by inexperienced and uninvested sailors? We wondered that, but we also toured several voyage catamarans that had been in charter service out of Soper's Hole for 11 to 13 years. These boats that were twice the age of the lagoon we were on and had been chartered for their entire lives were in so much better condition than our lagoon. They were not as pretty as our lagoon, but they used Corian counter surfaces, fiberglass surfaces, and the flooring was made of a sealed teak and holly inset that allowed the charter operator to actually clean the interior of the boat with a hose. There was very minimal surface decay and delamination on these boats. It's the classic trade-off between form and function. I have 2 more cautions about lagoons. First, before you buy a lagoon, Google Lagoon Bulkhead Issue. You will find very disturbing stories about the pressure from the mast causing interior bulkheads to collapse and warp causing doors in the hulls to either become unclosable or worse, unopenable. Supposedly, later model years have corrected this problem, but I looked at the bulkheads in this 5-year-old lagoon because I was curious. Nothing was collapsing, but I did note the doors to the forward cabins were not completely square. The doors were fit tight at one end, but just slightly gapped at the other end. Maybe I'm being picky on this observation, but after knowing about the previous problems, this didn't give me a warm and fuzzy feeling. Second, Google Lagoon escape hatch recalls, or Goyot escape hatch recall. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's Goiot. This is not a Lagoon mistake, and other manufacturers like Fountain Peugeot have the same hatches, but it's very important to get the recall taken care of because it can cause the boat to sink rapidly and without warning. These are the reasons we cannot be comfortable purchasing a Lagoon catamaran. Am I wrong? Do I have anything incorrect in this review? Have you made the same observations, or have you had better experiences with Lagoons? Please leave your thoughts in the comments. Maybe I have this wrong and we should still be considering Lagoon for our boat. I'd love to hear from people who have had positive experiences owning Lagoons. Thanks for watching. Drop us a comment. If this review was useful to you, please hit the like button. Also, check out our other videos on our channel. We are just getting started and we can really use your help by following us on our journey.